So Halloween wasn't that long ago, and I totally missed the event at the inventory and still regret it. So I wanted to put together a costume anyway. I like superheroes, and when I think of superheroes I've met, the first one that comes to mind is obviously Ladybug. Now, anyone who's done pose work will immediately recognize that this is impossible to put together in KKL while still being able to pose it. I would need to go through every single pose in Photoshop and apply the pattern to my suit. And if I wanted to make one tiny change to the suit, I'd have to start all over again. Luckily, this is another problem solvable with a custom import pipeline, so let's get to work. The first step is to make a new skin. Let's call it Superhero and assign it to myself. This will create a new reskins folder for my new costume. I've already covered skins in another video, so I'll skim through this process. Remember that you can't change layer types in alternate skins, so I'll need to get creative to match my normal clothes. Next is the pose work. I'll copy my sheet from the original costume so that it pulls in all the poses, my base appearance, and so forth. I'm going to be changing my clothes though, so I'll clear out all the wardrobe codes. I've already set up a fully clothed set outside the video, so I'll paste that into the fully clothed stage and then use the export lineup feature to edit all my stages at once. Let's zip through this process. Sorry to disappoint, but I'm also masquerading as a Barbie doll today. Time to import the lineup into the editor. You'll notice I've left the hair filter selected here, which isn't normally done when making clothing codes. However, since my hair is changing based on the stage, I need to include the hair as part of my clothes. I'm just pulling up the cropping window for a few poses to confirm they look right, and now I'm ready for the pipeline. Let's call this one costume. We're going to use a new node today. The image node. This loads an image from a file as opposed to a cell in a matrix. I put together a texture for my suit in Photoshop previously and saved it in my attachments folder outside the opponents folder. This is a place to hold assets that I want saved in the repository but not included in the game online. It's also where image attachments are copied to automatically. Okay, I need to figure out how to apply this texture to my suit. Let's try a blend node. That's always a good trick. So a few things stand out. First, we clearly don't want to use normal blending, and second, our texture is way too small. We could move it around by setting the offset, but what we really want is to make a tile by changing the clamping mode. Repeat will cause the texture to repeat itself over the entire base image, while mirror will make it repeat, but flip itself around. Now, let's try the multiply blend mode. This is why I made my clothes white, since white times a color equals that color. This is getting closer. The texture conforms to my curves, but we still need a way to get it off of my skin. To do that, we'll need to create a mask. This is actually a pretty similar process to what we did for my transparent shirt under the jacket. So let's load in my fully clothed costume into KKL and take off the costume, leaving only my accessories. You'll also see I'm pushing the breasts in to simulate being under the clothes. This doesn't actually do anything though because that's part of the pose code and not the clothing. The better way to do this would be to use a bra and turn the bra transparent. But since I'm not that well endowed, things will work out pretty well anyway, but it's something to keep in mind. Anyway, so I've made a new sheet to hold this mask and turned the entire sheet into a pipeline asset so it doesn't create PNG files when importing. I'll import one to make sure I didn't mess up, and hold up, why is the pipeline running? It's because I copied this sheet from the first one which hit a pipeline, so I'll need to remove it here. Now things should be all set. Let's jump back into the pipeline editor and add a reference to this L. As always, I'm going to connect the key to the current cell. Let's move the texture blend out of the way for a bit and add another blend node. For this one, I'm using the extract mode, which means to throw away any pixels that match between the two images. There's a bit of junk from artifacts on my cape, but we'll ignore that since it won't be noticeable in the end. What matters is that we now have an image containing only my pajamas. You might have noticed that I never hooked up anything to the amount input. The default amount is 0, which for extract mode means to keep the pixels from the base image. If we gave it an amount, it would either take the pixels from the blend image or a mix between them. But we want the base image, so let's unplug it. Now if we tie this mask into the multiply node, we get a nice textured costume ready to wear. All that remains is to combine it with my nude base. I apologize if this graph is becoming a mess to follow. I've got limited screen space. But it works. I can import various poses, and it all looks good. Actually, my gloves weren't tinted. Why not? Oh, that's because in our nude base, I forgot to take my gloves off, so let's go do that. There we go. The costume is ready. Let's add the pipeline to the other stages that have the bodysuit and see how it works. Uh-oh. In the Lost Cape stage, I still have the back of my cape. If we open up the pipeline, we can see why. It's because we're drawing our costume on top of the nude base, and the nude base has the cape on it. So we'll need to use a different nude base for each clothing stage. I'll go back to my costume base sheet and add some rows for the various states of undress. I don't need a separate no mask row, because the resulting mask will be the same as no cape. Now, do you remember how to reference different rows from a cell reference node? That's right, with a parameter node. So I'll add one and link it to the row input. And then for each stage, I'll set parameter 0 to the appropriate row of my costume base sheet. And we've confirmed that the cape is gone in the Lost Cape stage now. You might see this yellow arrow during your imports, which is an irritating bug with KKL 104. To remove it, you need to go to KKL and toggle a menu on and off. I'll import a batch of poses now to see how things went. Looks pretty good. If we jump back to my main character file, we can see the skin is working properly. Hooray! Well, not quite. I actually messed up the Lost Mask stage. Remember how I didn't make a no mask row because it wasn't necessary? Well, I still tried using one in the parameter. So once I fixed that, it works properly. And that's it. It might have been a bit confusing to follow at first, but we were able to apply a ladybug texture automatically to all our poses in less than 10 minutes. But looking at this again, I think the line on my legs looks pretty silly. I should add some boots to my costume. Without the pipeline, such a change would have invalidated all the work I already did, but let's see what we can do. First I'll update my clothing lineup to add to the boots to every stage where my costume is. Then I'll update the lineup for my costume base sheet too. That should be everything. But when I import, I don't see any difference. If I use the crop button to see the underlying code, the boots are there, so what's the deal? Well, for performance reasons the editor tries to cache poses in the pipeline and sometimes doesn't realize when things are out of date. We can force it to run a full import by using this little refresh button. running any of the batch imports will always do full imports. But anyway, changing this costume, which would have taken a day or two of manual labor in Photoshop, is already done, and we can go back to more entertaining aspects of character creation. Until next time.